It's 2021 and this is Cricketology. Not the happiest of New Year for our Sri Lankan cricket team, unfortunately, as we tumbled down and got defeated in that second test against the Proteas at the Wanderers in Johannesburg. That match finishing in less than 3 days. Kind of expected. I'm sure my friend here, Haroon Mowjood, will agree. What's up, Haroon? Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too, but not the greatest of starts for the new year from a cricketing perspective, Samir. As we expected, Wanderers probably the most toughest conditions for batsmen, especially subcontinent batsmen, to kind of face. And it really was evident in how we kind of approached the game. We were never ready for it, and ultimately paid the price.
We were always going to struggle, Haroon. I mean, Wanderers, not many Asian countries have done too well over there. And going by the fact that two of our best batsmen, informed batsmen, Chandimal and Dhananjaya, weren't available. We had a debutant in Vinod Bhanuka, Thirimana, who's not found for a long time. Going into that, it was always going to be tough. But having said that, despite the match being less than 3 days, I think there were a couple of positives for us to take. Obviously, in terms of batting, maybe we could have been a bit better with our shot selection. Yes, the ball was moving around, but you still can apply yourself in a pitch like that. South African batsmen showed that to us. You know, if you do apply yourself, you can get those runs. But what about the rest of the positives for Sri Lanka? What did you see as some of the things that we can capitalize upon?
From a batting perspective, if you're specifically looking at the last test, nothing much, to be honest. I was quite impressed the way Thirimana kind of batted in that second innings. He looked quite free-flowing and he looked for the runs. I think the most important thing with Thirimana has been sometimes he can get prodded down and kind of come into a shell. But here in this instance, you saw the way he was driving was very, very impressive. And the commentator spoke very high of him, and you know, that's kind of one positive from a batting point of view. But from a bowling end, I was very happy with Asitha Fernando. As I mentioned in our previous chat show, he could be a handful. He was very nippy. He moved the ball both ways, and he continuously kept on asking the questions from the South African batsman, and very, very rarely bowled a loose ball. That was the most impressive kind of debuts that I've witnessed. And yeah, nothing to complain in terms of a bowling point of view. The way we came back on that second day and kind of brought things to our hand, those are the kind of positives that you can take away from the last test, Samir.
And one more positive, perhaps you missed out, is Dimuth finding some form.
Yeah,
finally.
Yes, finally finding some form. That was a gritty knock. But personally, for some reason, I don't know. When I was watching his entire inning. His bat kept on turning. I don't know whether you noticed.
I did. I in fact did. Yes.
Every time he tried driving down the ground, you saw that bat turning. So I wonder whether there are some technical adjustments, or whether it's something natural in him, or whether it's the humidity there. I really don't know what the reason was. But you saw many strokes where the ball was in the slot to be driven, but he kind of couldn't, get those runs away, where he could have got more runs had he got them.
Not in full control of his bat. If that's, I mean, Sri Lanka in general with their cricket haven't been too much in control lately. There were a few debuts actually. In fact, there were a few changes. Vinod Bhanuka, you mentioned, he didn't have the greatest outing. Look, I always say this, whenever I speak on cricket, that I don't think it's good to hand a debut to someone, especially a batsman, when you're away on tours, especially at a place like the Wanderers, because even the best batsmen in the world struggle in a place like that. You go and hand a debut to someone like Vinod Bhanuka, who has big aspirations, who's touted to be a good batsman who has something for a future for Sri Lanka cricket. Are you comfortable with that strategy of handing debuts to some people on away tours?
No, personally, I'm not. I've always kind of stressed on these facts. It depends on where you are traveling to, Samir. So if you're going to a bowler-friendly country, maybe you can kind of debut with some quick fast bowlers.
Yes, so if they find their confidence.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you're going to subcontinent, then probably you can get in some batsmen, some spinners in to debut. So that kind of a strategy should be adapted. But yeah, you're kind of putting the poor fellow on the deep end when you get him to face the bowlers like Ngidi on those tracks. Yeah, it's not fair, to be honest. To measure him, to use that as a yardstick and measure him, I don't think it's fair.
Let's hope that he's given more opportunities like some of the other batsmen have been given for such a long time for Sri Lanka. Thirimana being a prime example of that. Coming to that subject though, having given opportunity after opportunity to some of the batsmen, now this has become the biggest talking point, Haroon, from this test. Kusal Mendis, the name that is probably going viral on social media right now. Everyone has something to say. People are losing friendships, unfortunately, over this discussion.
Trying to defend him.
Yeah, some are saying that, we've had enough of him. No, he's really talented. The guy needs to be persisted with. I am honestly done. You must have seen my tweet. I'm done with this discussion. I don't even know what to say anymore. So let's try and answer this very important question. talented guy. I think nobody disagrees that fact. Everybody agrees the fact that the guy's got what it takes. He's got immense talent, and honestly speaking, he's one of the best batsmen in Sri Lanka right now. But what is ailing the guy, and why is he getting so many ducks? What's the problem, Haroon, as you see it?
Yeah, so maybe as I have personally expressed my opinion on social media as well, I think he needs a break.
Okay.
Sri Lanka cricket will have to kind of
You're on that camp
speak
then.
to him, because I don't think it's fair to abandon him as the cricketer Kusal Mendis. He's a fantastic talent. He's immense potential and a very skillful batsman. So maybe the authorities will have to have a chat with him. I saw a remark made by the captain himself saying that they will have a chat with him and see whether he needs a break or whether he needs to bat somewhere else. Ideally, a break would do. Sometimes relaxing and rejuvenating yourself before coming into the game can really help his temperament. So that's where I feel they might have to take that tough call, but I think it's the right call. They'll have to give him a break and probably get him to play some domestic cricket, which is starting not too long. So that should be the approach.
All right. In fact, speaking of going back to domestic cricket and scoring runs, he did that last season. He scored a couple of very big centuries, in fact. So again, measuring your domestic performance against going on an away tour and scoring runs, not the ideal thing. I think there was some suggestions that perhaps Sri Lanka should facilitate a county stint for him, play on tough pitches like in England, where you experience playing alongside some other kind of players, and then the sort of things that you learn from those experiences could also be. You get guys like Aravind De Silva, Kumar Sangakkara, even Mahela. The reason they had the bit of success that they had on away tours was because they played county stints. They understood those pitches better. You think that would work for
that? Would, but I don't know how far the authority, that is Sri Lanka cricket as a body, can kind of impact. Generally, that's done through the player manager, the agent, and that's how they get that thing through. So that's a bit of a question mark. But if his agent can do that, and I also am very, very critical about these play agents, because I think they have a big role to play, especially when a cricketer is failing.
True.
Because they have to make sure that he's intact, he knows his responsibilities, and kind of in Kusal Mendis' case, I've always stressed on grooming him as an adult and a professional. He's still that kid that you can see on the field, when he speaks, the way he gets onto social media and tries to kind of counter-attack the criticism that is placed on him. So those things he'll have to kind of learn to be mature and be more of a man than a kid.
Okay, be a mature cricketer and a mature person. That's what Haroon says. But I'll tell you one thing though, guys, whoever's watching, listen, I mean, you can be in the camp that says enough with Kusal Mendis, and you can be in the camp that says, no, look, he must be persistent with. Whichever side you take, I'll tell you one thing. Listen, you can criticize a cricketer. You can talk about their abilities not being good enough, but let's not get personal. That's ugly. I've seen some very unfortunate, very, very ugly looking memes on social media. It's not cool. Let's not attack someone personally for their disabilities. Perhaps you can criticize them for the fact that they aren't playing well enough. You can talk about their technical glitches. You can talk about their mental glitches in terms of not being prepared enough or not making the right selections or the right choices. But please don't ever get personal. It's not nice. Little bit of advice from your friend Sam. Okay, so let's put this tour behind us then. Okay, again, honestly speaking, I expected this, because when we went to South Africa with not much experience, this was expected, 2 difficult pitches. But let's look to the future. England are here. We have 2 tests coming up at Galle. First test on the 14th of January, that's next Thursday. It's a holiday in Sri Lanka, so we can sit back, relax, and watch the game from home. There will be changes in the squad, obviously some of them forced because there are injuries. 2 of the biggest names that will help Sri Lanka, with confidence is Angelo and Chandimal. Both are back in the squad because that's 2 very big names to be able to get those runs in the middle. They are set to return, and also Roshan Silva, someone who's scored a ton of runs in the domestic circuit. He comes back after being given the axe a while ago, and there are a few names that are floating around. Ramesh Mendis is being given an opportunity. You've seen some of these names that are being included. Sandakan comes back. How do you see these 2 are panning out? Do you think we can match up to England's prowess? Because last time they were here, they beat us 3-0.
Correct.
And their spinners outplayed us. So where do you see these 2 are going?
Yeah, so it's about understanding what our strengths are. And I think if you look at the spinners combination, I think we, looking at it from a present form point of view, we are kind of on top, because the English spinners, that is Dominic Bess and the crew, have not had the best of seasons coming in from their last test series. So we'll have to play to our strengths. Obviously, Galle is very sprint friendly. We'll have to go with 2 spinners, and Wanindu Hasananga will be ideal in these conditions.
Right.
If he can play that all-round alone and as a second spinner. But you'll have to bring in the front-line left-arm spinner if we are to kind of give competition to the English side. Like even in South Africa, we lack that quality left arm spinner. You know, with that bounce, there's something that a person like Ambuldeniya could have got off those tracks.
So who are your two main spinners are going to be then Ambuldeniya and Wanindu Hasaranga. Yeah. And then they'll probably go with just two seamers.
Two seamers. Yeah. Ideally, in those conditions, it's no point, you know, because you're only going to see more and more injuries coming up.
True. So. If at all, I think Nuwan Pradeep has been recalled to the squad, so it might be him alongside Suranga Lakmal if he gets better on time. Because again, he's a leading paceman, and unfortunately, we did miss him a lot. I'm sure he must have done wonders at that Wanderers pitch, you know, knowing his strengths with his lines and lengths. Okay, we've got something new on this show. Apparently, we have fans, Haroon, who watch our show very passionately, and one of them wanted to ask a question. Yusuf Zuhri on Twitter, he's used the hashtag Sam's Cricketology, and his question is very complicated question actually for you. He says, with the Colombo and elite school centric nature of cricket, what changes would ensure that the best 11 from the whole of Sri Lanka play for the team, and what should be done to minimize the deficit between the standard of our domestic cricket and international cricket?
Okay, so
you're from a Colombo-centric Colombo school that is known for its cricket. Yeah. But one of the criticisms is that, you know, it's always these boys in these schools that are highlighted, but some of the other rural schools that may be doing well and don't get the attention of those who administer the game.
Understood.
How do you see this?
So I think there's two parts to this question. I'll answer the first part. I kind of tend to disagree in terms of now the current cricket structure being centric to Colombo and elite schools. Because you look at the squads, you'll just get very few people from the elite. Kusal Perera and Ambuldeniya are the only ones I can think who are representing my school. But you take...
There are a few Josephians there.
A few Josephians. But if you look at the background, Samir, to be honest, most of these guys come from different schools.
True.
And the facilities, the infrastructure, you know, the exposure that they get at that level will never get them to the level that they are in currently.
Am I right that Kusal Perera was also given a scholarship to your school to come and play cricket?
So if I explain Kusal's situation, they had cricket only up till under 15. So then he had to take the choice to select a school, and he had 3 schools to select, and he ended up coming to Royal.
Okay.
So likewise, there are many cricketers in the outskirts or in the rural areas that don't have Division 1 cricket, or they don't play Division 1 cricket. They play at the lower divisions. So if there are exceptional talents, they have no option but to look out, to scout. I'm not really saying that it should be Colombo centric. You take Gaul, you have Mahindra, Richmond, Aloysius, some top schools. You take Kandy, you have Trinity, St. Anthony's, the Amarajas. So all these schools kind of fall into this whole elite concept in terms of a cricketing perspective. So it's bound to happen. Most of these cricketers that you see, if for example, Dhananjay De Silva I played with in person, he came from a different school to Dharmaraja. Richmond College. Same with Suranga Lakmal, they were to Richmond College. So that's bound to happen. But unfortunately, the fact is that infrastructure is not developed in those areas for them to play at the Division 1 levels.
So I guess it's up to the cricket authorities then to, you know, sort of develop school cricket, not just in terms of, you know, the schools that are being highlighted, but also go out there and look at some of these schools that don't have these facilities.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a very long discussion. You know, this can go on for a long time as who's to blame, what should be done, and those kind of things. What about the second part of the question then? There's a big difference between domestic and international cricket. Is that because of the club structure that everyone talks about?
So that it's kind of a no-brainer there. You just have too many teams competing in this one tournament. Mahal has kind of continuously reiterated of the fact that you need lesser number of teams. The provincial system is what's going to, you know, bring out
that the best of each area represents.
Exactly. You know, when you have 20 teams competing in a tournament and you play, I don't know, 10-12 matches, you're bound to get, you know, weak opponents.
True.
And you can get those 5 wickets, those centuries, and you really brag about yourself. But the real test comes when you prune that down and compete against, you know, people with the same temperature, so that, you know, you're comparing apples with apples, not apples with oranges. That's the argument.
I mean, you can look at India, for example. It's a huge country with, you know, lots of people, but you get something like a Ranji Trophy. They've got very limited teams, and that's why, because the best of the best play against each other. So then you get the real talent coming out. I think that's something that Sri Lanka will have to look at going forward.
I have another answer for that question, as you mentioned, is if the agents can kind of organize or sort them out for instance, to play in county, maybe down under, South Africa, England, so that they get acclimatized to the situation and the conditions there, you know, get the match exposure and all those nice stuff.
Yeah, so that sort of helps, you know, get them an understanding of not just Sri Lankan conditions, but also those abroad. Okay, if you have any questions in the future, use the hashtag Sam's Cricketology on Twitter, and we'll try and see if we can take your question and get Haroon to answer them. Fine cricketer in his day, by the way, Sri Lanka under 19. Okay, before we go to the competition, your prediction for the first test?
It's
Draw?
tough.
It won't be a draw for sure.
Yeah, the way I don't know. England's a very strong side, and they've always been in their A games.
James Anderson has said that they've not had the ideal preparation coming into Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So they're a little wary of not taking Sri Lanka very lightly. Do you see us giving them the challenge that we couldn't give them the last time they were here?
We could, but I'll still tip England to kind of outperform us, because looking at all the injury woes, and we have still not been able to get that solid unit because of the injuries. We'll be trying and testing a few people. I'm personally hoping for a Sri Lankan win, but looking at fact and logic and all that stuff, England, has the upper hand.
I hope your logic is wrong, Haroon. I'll say it to your face. Okay, right. So competition time. Last time we had a question, and the winner of that is Desert Dash on YouTube. I don't know if that's your real name, but you won the competition. We asked you who's going to get the highest number of wickets for Sri Lanka in the second test. It was Vishwa Fernando. You got the answer right. So come to the cricket store, which is this beautiful place we're in. Awesome place to get all your cricket equipment, and pick up a choice of your LPL jersey of your size. You can come here and collect that. And for this week, for you to be able to win an LPL jersey, the question is, which English batsman will get the most number of runs in the first test? Remember, English batsman, both innings combined, the highest run scorer in the first test. Answer that question, guess the right answer on YouTube only, and make sure you subscribe to the channel to be eligible to win the competition. So you can win an LPL jersey too if you get that answer right. Haroon Mowjood, thanks so much, man.
Thank you very much, Sam. Pleasure.
All right, so there you go. That's the end of Cricketology episode 3. We'll see you not next week, but the week after that, at the end of the first test against England. We'll be looking back at how Sri Lanka performed, and then also building up to the second test. We'll see you next time. That's Haroon, I'm Sam, and this was our perspective.